Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny. I needed to celebrate today and I thought making a video would be good. Maybe I can inspire some people who are new to recovery or people who have been in recovery for a while and they're wondering if they can keep it going and keep that momentum going, because this is a milestone for me. Today is March 4th, 2019, and it marks 10 years to the date that I've been actively in recovery from anorexia, bulimia, and compulsive exercising. To commemorate the occasion, I have bought myself a 10-year chip, 12-step chip. I hope you can see. The lighting in here is not great. I apologize, but I got a really pretty pink one with sparklies. You may be thinking, hey Jenny, why are you getting a 12-step chip if this is for an eating disorder? Well, there are 12-step groups for people with eating disorders, one of which I was very active in years ago when I first moved to LA. It's not something that you're really supposed to talk about publicly, like in media and video and stuff like that, but I will just mention that there are 12 steps available for people with eating disorders. If you want more information, contact me privately. I will leave my information below. You can DM me on Instagram. It's probably the best way. And then I can tell you. But yeah, so I got this. I am gonna see if there's a meeting I can go to today. I'm not sure if there is, but if there is, I'm gonna try. But yeah, I'm really proud of myself. Oh, I guess we should start with my story. I'm also going to link you below to an article a couple of years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, Jen Gerson from Yahoo Beauty, that is a tongue twister, Yahoo Beauty, wrote, she interviewed me for, and it also is interviewing somebody else who I don't know personally who has an eating disorder, and kind of gives you two different perspectives. But mine was kind of, how did I get better? In a very short article form. Let me start. Okay, so my name is Jenny. I had developed my eating disorder, I'd say, when I was around 13. That's when my disordered eating began. My parents didn't figure it out until I was 17, and I wasn't diagnosed with anorexia until I was 17. Back when I was a kid, there was no social media. The only eating disorders that I had ever heard of, I remember my freshman year, we had to watch, kind of like in our health class, or not health class, but one of my classes, we had to watch a documentary on anorexia, but it was like really extreme anorexics. And I only say that because when I started getting sick, I didn't recognize myself in that. I wasn't so emaciated that I was literally like a walking skeleton. So in my head, I was like, well, I'm not that bad off, even though I was super sick. But there wasn't a lot of social media or anything around for me to constantly see it and to see other people's stories and things like that. I'd heard of Tracy Gold from Growing Pains. I knew she had issues. And then one of my best friends growing up had also been diagnosed with anorexia. I didn't become anorexic because of her. It's just we were very similar people. And so when she was diagnosed, I still didn't believe that I had an issue. And I really didn't understand it either until I started having to go into treatment. Okay, how to make this quick. I started getting sick when I was younger. Like I said, I was 13. I'm not going to give you any tips or tricks. I will just say that it basically started as simple as me thinking I needed to clean my diet up, and it got out of control to the point where everything was super ritualized. If I look at like pages of stuff, like my homework and things like that from high school, it's literally every margin of everything is me writing over and over again my calories and trying to figure out what I could eat the rest of the day, or plan for the next day, or for the week. Or I'd gotten to this place where I was just so rigid and I thought I had everything together, even though I didn't. In terms of why I developed my eating disorder, through a bunch of therapy, going back and looking, I know it was a control issue. I know that I was a very anxious child. I had OCD and a lot of anxiety, and I think when you combine perfectionism, I was a very smart kid, and I felt like I was a lot bigger than my friends growing up. Looking back, as an adult looking back, I was not an overweight child, but I was a little bigger than my friends. Not fat-wise, it was just almost like I matured a little bit faster than they did. But to me, I felt like I took up too much space. I felt like I was just always taking up too much room and that I stuck out. Like I remember thinking that if I were in the same room as them, I stood out. Everyone would see me over them. And the weird thing is I always wanted to be different. I always wanted to be different and to stand out, but not in the way that's like physically, if that makes sense. I became a vegetarian when I was 13. It was for ethical reasons, but I also think it did go hand in hand with my eating disorder. I know it often does. A lot of people who have eating disorders claim to be vegetarian. A lot are, and a lot maintain that through the recovery. It's definitely possible, but a lot of people use dietary restrictions as an excuse to restrict. So I remember being challenged a lot when I was younger because of that, especially because being vegetarian and vegan was not as popular as it is now. There were not as many substitutes. Like if you went to the hospital and wanted to get something, like the only vegetarian protein substitute was peanut butter. Like that's all they would give you back then. I'm sure it's very different now. But I remember I had managed my eating disorder to a point where nobody knew what was going on. They just thought I was shedding my baby weight throughout high school. And then junior year, I remember I was headed to Europe to go on a trip with my history teachers. And I remember going to the bookstore before the trip and going through all of the, like, we were going to England, France, and Italy. So I went to look up how to say all these dietary restrictions I had, like all the phrases in French and in Italian, and I wrote it down. I remember being like, no oil, no butter. Like I had all of my rules because I was terrified that there was nothing I could eat there. I was right, there was very little I could eat there, but it was interesting because when I went over there and I lost like every bit of control that I had in the US over my food, in my head, I immediately assumed I was rapidly gaining weight. Rapidly is what I thought. Even though we were walking all the time, it wasn't something I could count, I could measure. Even though if there wasn't anything I could eat there, I would get like baked potatoes off the side of the street or try to find what I could, because a misconception is people who are anorexic don't eat. No, I ate. It's just like I didn't want to feel hunger, and I just wanted to eat the least amount of calories to fill me up. And it was no nutrition. It was just, I was killing myself. But I remember leaving that Europe trip. I remember like I would punish myself on that trip. Like if I didn't eat the way I thought I should, I would not let myself go out and enjoy things like everyone else. I remember they all went to the disco in Italy, wouldn't allow myself to go. I did a lot of self-punishing throughout my disorder. It was one of the, I would take out anger and all my emotions on myself, because you're not wanting to feel this intense emotion, so you're doing these behaviors in order to not feel. But anyway, I came back from Europe thinking that I gained a ton of weight. I remember my mom saw me and she like started crying, and I didn't understand why. And basically I had lost weight when I was there. They weighed me as soon as I got home. They were really, really concerned, and they made me an appointment with a nutritionist. I remember at the Palace of Versailles, like walking through the garden with my friend that I went to school with at the time, who I guess was concerned too. And she told me she thought I should see a nutritionist, and she recommended hers. So I only did it because she recommended me to do it. And I remember that nutritionist, like I wasn't ready to get better. I didn't think I had an issue. I was just doing what people told me to do. So I didn't really follow what they said. But it gave me, I started learning meal plans at least. By winter break of senior year, I was so emaciated that my parents were gonna put me in the hospital. They had actually watched, Tracy Gold was in this movie called For the Love of Nancy, and they watched it separately. I guess one of my parents was watching it, and they told the other one to watch it. They realized that's what I had, so then they took it seriously, because again, this wasn't something that people talked about. There was no Facebook. There was nothing to like know that your friends' kids were struggling with this too. My dad was like, you're gonna go into the hospital, and they found me this hospital at the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. There was an eating disorder program there. I don't believe it's still there anymore. At this time, because this was years ago, there was not as many programs and options as there are now. There was not the same like different treatment modalities. I don't agree with a lot of the ways that I was put into recovery, like the methods they used. I think they harmed me more than helped me, but the ultimate thing was they wanted me to gain weight so I didn't die. And I remember my dad took me to Charleston, and I had to be inpatient because I was minor. I was put with the little kids in their like psych ward, and that was awful, awful, awful. Little kids say things too, like if they don't think you're thin enough, like they were like, why are you here? You don't look anorexic, even though I was very underweight. Like I had hair growing on my body. I was cold all the time. It hurt to sit anywhere because my bones touched everything. My face was swollen because my body was protecting my brain, so all the fluid was going to my brain. My extremities had very low blood pressure compared to the rest of my body because, again, everything was going to protect my heart and brain. I had no energy. I was so anxious all the time. I couldn't concentrate. I had gotten so bad where I would like hide out before I went to the hospital in my chorus teacher's closet in school. Like she would let me sit in there, and my best friend at the time would eat lunch with me because I wouldn't let anyone ever see me eat. I didn't want anyone to know I ate. I remember like going on honor choir places, I'd be a competitive singer, like these like trips, and my chorus teacher, I remember I was trying to eat a pear. I remember trying to eat a pear on the bus. And she saw me, and I was trying to like hide myself, so she pulled my head into her lap so no one would have to see me. And I remember that. She was standing up and pulled my head into her lap so I could eat my pear so no one could see me. She was like a really, really, really big help for me. Oh, there was this other teacher at school that they had to help me that I would like go, because I guess she had helped the other person at school that they found out was anorexic like years before. But I was like a mess. I remember one time I would freak out and like tore up paper in the hallway because I was so anxious, and like just like things that weren't really logical. When you start getting emaciated enough, like your brain doesn't operate normally. I went to that hospital. I was there for over 2 months. They wouldn't let me walk or anything, so I rapidly gained like 25 pounds. But when you rapidly gain weight without being able to move or anything, there was no muscle or anything. And I was taken and put back home and supposed to like finish my recovery, but I hadn't had time to really deal with a weight gain that quickly or deal with anything like that. And the reason I got out was because I wanted to go to the singing competition. So I basically faked it till I made it. Like I just did what they told me so I could get out, so I could go to the singing competition, because it was my senior year. It was my last year to do it. I tried really hard, but I had no desire to recover. So I remember the turning point was I was in the grocery store with my mom, and I turned over a thing of peanut butter and I looked at the ingredients, and it just triggered everything in me. And I immediately started counting calories again and drastically tried everything in my power to lose weight again, but my body didn't want to. It wouldn't allow me in the same way that it did before. So then I started binging, and I started over exercising to compensate for the binging. I refused to physically purge because of my singing. I didn't want to hurt my voice. Months passed. I graduated high school. There was just a lot of like lack of control still of where I could go to college. My parents decided they were going to get divorced. My dad told me he was going to divorce my mom, and I had this secret I couldn't really talk about. So that's when I became actually physically bulimic, because I realized that I had this secret I couldn't tell anyone, so I stuffed it down and then I threw it up. I struggled to stay in school the first year of college, really. The first semester I struggled a lot. I think I ended up having to withdraw, and I only got like a couple of class credits. Then the second portion, I didn't go to school. I think we got me ready for the summer. And then what did I do? Then my parents let me go to this private college in Alabama that I loved. It was really small. It was right up my alley. And I still had a lot of issues though. So I had to meet with like a counselor there, and I had to have my own refrigerator in my room, I remember, in my suite, so that because I couldn't control my binging. And I've done a separate video on binging, so you can look for that on my channel if you're curious how I overcame binging. That was really hard for me. So my weight basically fluctuated like crazy. I had no metabolism for years because I was just messing it up so much. But by 2002, I believe, I had to be hospitalized again for bulimia. It was just a mess. I again wasn't ready to get better. Literally, I went there thinking that I was gonna lose so much weight because I wasn't gonna be bulimic anymore, and it wasn't the case. Like, my metabolism hadn't kicked in yet, and then I couldn't handle it, and all the issues that I had gone there for, I wasn't ready to deal with. So nothing was solved, and I didn't get better. So I can reiterate, like, you have to want to get better. And now that there's so much more on social media, there's so much out there in terms of different ways of treatment modalities and things, I think I would have had a better shot had I started now from scratch, but I didn't. And I know I'm leaving stuff out, but this is already getting too long. Blogging became a thing when I was in college, and Zanga was huge. And so I got on Zanga and developed, like made my own little page and everything, and I found the eating disorder community there, and I was very, very active on it. I had a ton of followers. I actually have friends in real life now, still to this day, that I met on there. It's interesting to see how different we are and how recovered we are compared to back then. Back then, I swore up and down this was not a pro anorexia site, and it wasn't, but it was. It was like I wasn't telling people how to become anorexic or encouraging it, but I would post picture after picture of any inspiration to me, and I would constantly talk to other people and support them, and it was like literally my food diary. It was my exercise diary. I was beyond compulsive exercising. I was like abusing stimulants. I was taking diet pills. I was doing all these awful things to my body. No nutrition whatsoever was getting in me. It was literally just anything I could do to lose weight, stay full, and not be hungry, because I hated the feeling of being hungry. And all of that continued until literally, like, I kept dropping in and out of college because I would freak out. And thank God my college, like, I don't know why they were so accommodating, but I ended up being in the disability department because I couldn't handle things the way normal people could. My teachers accommodated me. If I one time, like, the dean of the theater department and some of my classmates showed up at my house because I had like withdrawn from school, and I guess what I wrote on people started finding my private Zanga, and then they started talking about it at school, and so people came, and like it was a mess, but people really did show up for me to try to help me through it. I think looking back now that I just had no place being in school. I needed to be away from everything that was triggering me. There was a lot going on in my family that I won't get into, but it kept me in my disorder for sure. And the night that my dad died, I remember thinking, okay, I have a choice here. I can either get better or I can die, because he was the person that was helping me through this. I lived with him. He understood me better than anyone. And with him gone, I knew that I literally had no one holding me accountable anymore but myself. So I shut down my Zanga page. I'm not sure why I didn't just approach it from a healthier place, but in my head, I just like needed to pull the switch, and I did it. And then I tried to figure out how to get better, and that took years. I had a lot of other issues that stemmed from that. When you get rid of your behaviors that you're doing to stop feeling, you start feeling feelings again. And if you haven't felt them for well over a decade, you have to learn how to feel them. And they're gonna come up and they're gonna scare you. And so I came up with other coping mechanisms that were not healthy, and I had to work on those. I was basically a series of relapses, but each relapse got longer and longer and longer and longer until now it's been 10 years. I consider myself taking it a day at a time. Moving to LA saved my life. It was not logical. I moved here to go into another eating disorder program. I went one day and realized this isn't for me. I have to figure this out on my own, because the same way over and over again is not working for me. I've got to put together a team that'll work for me, and that's what I did. And I started going to this 12-step program, not as a means to get better, but as a means from slipping back. I had to start with no food in my apartment. I had to work on how to learn how to reintroduce each food item, how to eat it. I just went through a lot of steps, which I've detailed in other videos. I realized that each year of recovery, like if you feel like you're not doing as well as you think you should, just think of it as that is how old you are. So if you're 1 year into recovery, you're a 1-year-old. If emotions are raw, if you feel like you're not doing a good job, are you doing as good as a 1-year-old would do? Because then you are doing a good job. Today I'm a 10-year-old, so I can handle things pretty well. My emotions aren't 100% though. I feel like I missed out on so much of my life that a lot of normal life activities that people did, I didn't experience. I just feel emotionally, I am about 10 years younger than I am right now. I'd say that's pretty accurate. And I don't mind that, because I think it keeps me younger as a person. I feel a lot younger. I actually look younger than I am. Intellectually, I'm my age, my real life age, but everything else I'm a lot younger. But even though I like being emotionally younger, I also am experiencing things at a delay than everyone in terms of like dating wise and the way I handle working environments and things like that. Like all of that took a learning curve for me because I spent so much of my college and high school just immersed in my eating disorder. The only people I wanted to be friends with back then were people with eating disorders because I didn't think anyone else understood me. I was just drawn to people who had that and it's not because I wanted to compete with them. It was just like no one else I felt like understood me. When I moved to LA, I moved because I didn't want to be the sick girl anymore. A couple of people knew I had an eating disorder, but not a lot of people. I got this tattoo, which at the time, I didn't know anyone else who had it. Now they're really, really popular and I see people making fun of them all the time. But to me, this is a symbol of something huge that I accomplished and I'm really proud of it. I was going to 12-step programs as much, like sometimes I'd go every day. Sometimes I would go several times a week. I would get service positions. I would talk to other people and became friends with people in LA who they wanted to get better. That's why they wanted. That's why they were in it. They weren't forced there. They weren't put there by their parents. They weren't in there while actively being sick as a way just to defy people. And I hadn't been around that before. That was nice. In college, I was in support groups, but it was always a mix of people who wanted to get better and they didn't. It saved me though, being in those groups. I was at this place in Atlanta before I was even hospitalized called the Atlanta Center for Eating Disorders. It was this tiny place then. It's massive now. It was just this little place back then. And it's crazy to think how much it's grown. I used to have to go on these trips with my nutritionist all the time and go to like restaurants. Like there are just all these things and all these pieces to having an eating disorder that people don't talk about. I never ever thought that I would be at the place I am right now. I never ever thought that I would say 10 years from now I would actually be in recovery for 10 years. I honestly thought it's something I would have the rest of my life. While I may not have been as emaciated as some people or had as something tragic happen to me physically, I was like a Lifetime movie. Like I say that and I don't say that lightly. The amount of places I had to go, the amount of times I was in and out of school and the things I would do to myself to punish myself and hurt myself, I never thought I would honestly be able to get to a place where I would live a normal life. And while I am doing this whole series on my channel, if you're a follower of my channel, I'm doing this series called My Life is a Freaking Mess, where I'm putting my life together because it really isn't together yet. It's so much more together than it was when I was active in my eating disorder. And this is just another step along the way. At 10 years, I'm having to find a way to a healthy way to put my life together. I'm gonna start exercising again this year for the first time, honestly, in about 10 years. Like over the years I've hiked and done things like that, but I haven't had a regular exercise program since I was a compulsive exerciser. I mean, the amount of hours I would spend in the gym every night in college because I abused stimulants to do it, and everyone knew me there, and no one there had any idea I had an issue. And I remember they would all praise me, and it like fed me, and it fed these rituals. And honestly, I look back and I have no idea how I did any of it. I don't know how I did any of it. So anyway, this represents a lot for me, and I am 10 years old today. And it's pretty cool. So I just wanted to make this video. If you have any questions about eating disorders or any, like I could do a Q&A video. I just don't know what people want to hear, and I know this was all over the place and I don't want it to be forever long, so I'm gonna end it here. But thank you for watching. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe, and I will see you whenever I decide to film a new video. Until then, have the best day of your entire life. A goodbye.